Woodstock. You've heard about it a million times. Peace signs, hippies, long hair, Volkswagens. It was a lovely looking concert experience. It drove a lifestyle and a culture that went on for decades and is still relevant today. Had some of the most memorable artists of all time as well, despite some negative elements being that of maybe a little bit dirty, a lot of drug use, but there was a lot of free food and water and a really loving environment. It was about bringing people together and joining each other on a musical journey. I mean, look at it. It looks fun, exciting. Not necessarily my scene, but for a lot of people, it would be a really fun going experience. It displays the best of what a music festival could be today, even with little infrastructure. We talk about it in history class because it really began to reflect the culture and attitudes of young people at the time. That was in 1969. But I'm going to ask you guys, have you heard of Woodstock 1999?
Hi there, I'm Jack Woodward, and for my blog, I'm going to go over Woodstock 1999. This will be more of a video essay type of vlog, but I certainly had never heard of Woodstock 1999, and I was really intrigued to learn about the second iteration of the most iconic concert of all time. And really, I wish I hadn't dug into it as much as I had. My mind was blown. It should be talked about all the time and really never gets brought up in media culture, which makes sense because it really should be swept under the rug. It was one of the poorest executions of concert and people management that I've ever seen in my life, and after watching your Netflix documentary on it recently, I thought it would be a fun topic to kind of dive into and share some information about it. So here we go. I'm about to get into it. So to start, we're going to go into some of what and how the event necessarily took place and a little bit of what makes it so interesting. So the headliners were DMX, Limp Bizkit, Korn, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Alanis Morissette, Sheryl Crow, Kid Rock, Metallica, and Creed, which makes a little bit more sense why I'd never heard of it. And trust me, the lack of super talented headliners was met by an incredible lack of infrastructure and planning for the event. This event led to 3 deaths and 1,200 people reporting to the medical tent and getting injured, multiple reports of sexual assault. It was really just a botched event from the beginning and wouldn't be let go by the creators and the people who put it on, and still deny it was their fault to this day. First, let's discuss the crowd and music of the time, specifically Limp Bizkit and Korn. Now, this music I cannot play for you because I'll get copyright striked on YouTube, but it is terrible and really just aggressive. It's mostly heavy metal, and it's really angry. It gets people going in a riot kind of sense. Specifically, the song I Wanna Break Shit by Limp Bizkit really got the crowd going and really resulted in them like tearing down a lot of the stage parts and a giant the management tower for lights and audio. This crowd was described as drunk frat bros incited by fellow members in the crowd and the lyrics and themes of the music. Looking at images from the crowd, it was clear there was no self-control and sexual assaults, groping occurring at every turn, and the young crowd was clearly under the impression they could do whatever they wanted. And issues like sexual assault were a lot less under the spotlight than they are now. Constantly yelling at musicians to show us your chest, to put it lightly. There was a clear buzz about Woodstock that this one was not about peace and about embracing the music, but was about rage and rejecting normal society behaviors. Sheryl Crow promptly rejected the request to show her chest, by the way. Really developing a mob mentality from the crowd, which we have seen recently at Travis Scott concerts where people were trampled to death, but this crowd was more energetic, more violent, and had more people. The toxic masculine energy and culture was fostered by the music and the people there, but was also really fostered by those who put on the event and did not treat the attendees well at all. It quickly became about rejecting the establishment, I guess you could say, after the people who paid a lot of money to go to this event saw how they would be treated there. Michael Lang was involved in the original Woodstock, and he helped set this one up and really wanted to replicate that experience. But as I kind of discussed, given the culture and how everybody acted at this time, and that time had kind of passed. So all the infrastructure he set up wasn't enough to handle all these people and how they would act in the new day and age. The city of New York and Lang helped to structure this and really had massive pitfalls at every turn. So some of these pitfalls were that there was no water, and even if there was, it was sponsored by Coca-Cola, and water bottles were super expensive, and these people kind of weren't set up in the best financial spots, or they really couldn't afford the water, so they had to forego water, which obviously is a major issue in the New York heat. There was trash everywhere. There was no one there to pick it up. They didn't have the infrastructure and didn't pay the people to come in and start cleaning up after every day because the events were going on so often that they couldn't do that. There was sewage water everywhere. A lot of people got like trench mouth and diseases because it was getting mixed in with drinking water. It was a really bad scene with that. And they threw an event on part of a tarmac, which is the hottest thing in the world in the summertime. So it resulted in a lot of people getting heat stroke and a lot of people passing out and a lot of people having a hard time with that. It was such a poorly planned event. People were dropping left and right, and there was no infrastructure to really help. And they quickly ran out of money and really couldn't help to change anything and couldn't afford to make the moves necessary to help fix what they had done. So not only was the event just unhealthy and gross, it brings me to kind of the security of the patrons that were there. There were 450,000 people there, so it was really hard to keep track and really help take care of those people, and they did not have the security guards, or I keep bringing up infrastructure, to handle that. It really reminded me of like security guards at like the OU football games or high school football games, or it's just people kind of volunteering. It's not the biggest deal ever because it's more of a cordial crowd, but just some college kids trying to make minimum wage, wanting to have a good time, certainly was not a good idea for this event. They didn't care about the people and were giving away their yellow shirts to random people that wanted to get behind the scenes and get closer to celebrities. And security guards were not properly trained or hired properly in order to help fix these issues. And that really, really causes this to become not only just unhealthy, gross, and not fun, but really, really dangerous. Now, there's an example of some of the security guards, and this kind of brings me to where the story gets a little bit scarier. It brings me to the airplane hangar stage, which is where a lot of the EDM and dancing electronic music was going. A guy named Fatboy Slim, who you'll see in the slideshow here, was playing a lot of the songs there, and so a lot of heinous acts and a lot of lack of security being able to prevent these acts really resulted in a horrible experience for these people. People were engaging in sexual acts apparently everywhere, in the middle of the dance floor even. And he was the the hot DJ of the day when all of a sudden you saw what looked like a floating platform. And in fact, it was a car that had been stolen, a van that had been stolen by patrons of the event, and were kind of driving its way through this hangar, which is obviously a potential huge danger. This really incited a true riot where they tore apart every element of this festival, and I had to evacuate all the talent. The Red Hot Chili Peppers screamed out of there because it really got out of hand so quickly and off the property, and it was true chaos. Everything was being burned down, torn to pieces. Every wall, every tent, everything in there was being torn to shreds. People were trying to break into ATMs, weren't really fighting each other, but was clearly angry at, as I had said earlier, the establishment. They were focused on those putting on the event, and really the National Guard had to be called in and tons of police to help calm everyone down. It had never occurred to me that it could have gotten this out of hand, and clearly the group think and being a group of people, it was a true riot, and I was mind blown that I had never heard of it. And it resulted in a lot of lawsuits against the people who put on the event, and they still deny it to this day, that they are at fault. Yeah, so after all that, the concert came to a close, and it really became a major issue, and was obviously very heavily media covered at the time. In closing, this was truly a terrible event to go to, not only from an entertainment and cleanliness standpoint, but it truly was unsafe. The music and culture of the time really made it impossible to replicate that original Woodstock experience. Lang was constantly asked about what transpired. He placed most of the blame on the musicians and for other people for inciting the violence. Really, it boiled down to a lot of people pointing fingers, and everyone in the documentary being interviewed was speaking as if they had all the answers and that they were saying that these things were wrong. But really, at the end of the day, no one was doing anything about it. They were all encapsulated and putting on and trying to replicate what was the most iconic concert of all time. Really was a tragic event, and one that started with the hopes of bringing everyone together and making it about the music. You think about the original Woodstock, they talked about how there was free food, how everyone was getting along. It was more, not family, but a family culture of everybody really coming together and wanting it to be about the music. There were tons of lawsuits, and many people walked away from this as if it was the worst weekend of their lives. My heart really goes out to all the women affected by the sexual assault cases and the riot environment that was created and incited and fostered in this concert. Now, if it were to happen today, it's super interesting because it would be a pop culture moment forever and would be almost unforgettable, really ingrained in our brains. And it was crazy to me that I hadn't heard about this before until I watched the documentary. And Woodstock happens every 30 years, but this event really makes me think that it might never happen again. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and my sources will be at the end of the video. It's been a pleasure doing it, and have a great day.